You can cross object lines, you can cross extension lines, you can cross hidden lines, you can cross center lines, but you can't ever, ever, never, ever, never, ever, never cross dimension lines. Hey, welcome back to Design with Miyoshi. I want to talk a little bit about dimensioning today and a little bit about lines and in general. So, let's talk about dimensioning. There are a few rules in dimensioning, and I just named one of them. The biggest one is that you never, ever, never, ever, never cross dimension lines. Unless you're an architect and you're doing interior dimensions. And there's a few other reasons, because of course we know that every rule has an exception. Except of course that one, but that's a different story. So, if you recall, object lines describe the object. Center lines tell where centers of arcs and circles are. I don't have any hidden lines over here, but hidden lines tell where things are hidden, something that you can't see in the particular view. Then we have extension lines, and we have, of course, extension lines extend from the object to the dimension line, and of course we have dimension lines, which are the ones with the arrows on them. So, first thing, like I said, the first thing you want to make sure you know is that you never ever cross dimension lines. So if I have this object right here, I would not want to have this dimension up here instead, because that would break that never rule. So we would not want to do that. And I'll just kind of erase that there. So first thing, don't cross dimension lines. You can cross extension lines. Notice we cross extension lines there. You can cross object lines even. Notice we cross one there. And of course, you can cross center lines. We don't really cross any center lines there, but you can cross center lines and hidden lines as well. Okay? So, make sure you do that. The second thing you should know about dimensions is as you put them on a page, the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, says that you should, at least they used to say this, you should have your first dimension from the object line to your first dimension. That distance should be 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch minimum. It could be bigger than that, but it can't be smaller than that. Then each dimension beyond that should be 1/4 of an inch for every dimension you have beyond that. Okay? That's on the printed page. Obviously it would be different on the model, but that's what it is on the printed page. So 3/8 of an inch from the object line to the first dimension, and then 1/4 of an inch every dimension after that. So that's a nice way to look at things. It makes it nice and beautiful. You will see some drawings that don't look like that exactly. They might be architectural drawings or some other kind of drawings like that that don't have those exact dimensions, but those are what I like to do for my mechanical drawings for my students. Another thing you notice here is that this diameter dimension, or this leader from this leader with this leader line, it's not vertical, or it's not horizontal. You want to stay away from vertical and horizontal as best you can. I don't know if there's ever any time when you need them vertical or horizontal. You might need one vertical or horizontal if you're doing some kind of other thing besides telling your radius or diameter. But for radius or diameter, a leader line should not be vertical or horizontal. So it shouldn't come down like a center line either way. Okay? So there's a few things about line types and about dimensioning. Now, one of the nice things about dimensioning tells you, how big something is. If you're using a software package, then a CAD software package, then most likely you're going to get these gaps determined by the software package. Not by you, but by the software package. And one of the things I did actually do this on purpose was, notice there's a gap here on the center line. There's not a gap here between the center line and the dimension line, but there is a gap here between this object line, or the center line and the extension line. So the reason this is an extension line. The reason I did that is because some software packages, if you grab the end point of a center line, it'll put it right on the end there. If I'm using SolidWorks, for instance, and I grab this center line and this line down here to dimension that, it should put a gap, just like it does here. Other software packages, you may not see that. The other thing is, you should be able to change it, but there's a little line. The line extends beyond the dimension line here, And there's other different style things you can do, but that's determined by the software package you're using and how much you modify the parameters for that. Okay? That's some of the fundamentals of dimensioning. Now, here's a couple different types of dimensioning. And dimensioning, believe it or not, dimensioning can change the cost of an object. So over here, there's a couple things you can see on this drawing that are important. That actually I have one too many dimensions over here. Oh no, I don't. This one's for that guy here. I actually have this dimension here for the gap there. This tells you that this distance is more important than this distance. The overall length and this distance here are more important than this guy here. Same thing with this one. The overall height and the notch out here, those are the more important than this little height right there. And you can tell that by the dimensioning. The dimensioning tells you what's important. Over here, the same kind of thing applies. This is what's called datum dimensioning, when everything is measured from the same point. So I'm measuring everything from this line here over to the first step, and then over to the step there, and over to the step there. That tells me that the distance from here to there, and the distance from here to there, and the distance from here to there are more important than the step treads in this case. And the same thing, the important thing on the vertical side is that these heights match up, well, whatever those heights are, whether they are equal to each other or not. But these heights are more important than the distance from the bottom to the top, for instance. So the dimensioning will tell you what's important. So there's a few things about dimensioning. Now I wanted to mention one other thing about lines, and so it's kind of a lost art anymore with CAD packages, software packages, because one of the things that you would do as a manual drafter would be that you would know when to make a line go into another line and when you would want to make a gap. So over here, this is a drawing that I have my students do, and in this drawing, I need to locate where the center of this circle is, or that arc. And the way I do that, the easiest way to do that, is to extend this this object line. I make a center line horizontally, and I make a center line vertically. When these guys are collinear, in other words, they are the same line, if this object line and that center line are the same, I'll make a little gap there. If this object line, or this object line and this center line are collinear like they are here, I'll make a gap there. Because you don't want to go in there and have to have the reader of the drawing try to determine whether that line, if it was solid all the way through, whether it was part of the object line or part of the center line. Here's a different illustration. You can see the two different views. And this is the same kind of thing, but this one uses hidden lines instead of center lines. Here's the top view, and here's the side view where I'm looking at this hole that goes all the way through. And the way you can look at the lines is, since this guy is tangent to this edge there, I know that this line and that line for this object line and this hidden line for the hole, they are collinear. So if they're collinear, I make a gap there. Then the other side of that coin is, if they're perpendicular, if the hidden line and the object line are perpendicular, the way you show that it goes all the way through in this case is make sure that it touches the object line. Same thing on this side. It touches the object line, so we know that hole goes all the way through. So, just a few things. Some dimensioning rules, some rules about lines, especially about center lines and hidden lines and how they interact with other lines, other object lines, and just a few things about those subjects for you all. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Design with Miyoshi.